Hi friends, today let's dive into the last book and last two movies of the Hunger Games series. The story of the last book mainly takes place in District 13, a place that was long believed by many to be completely eradicated.
And we're on our way to District 13 right now.
13?
13, yes.
The population of District 13 did indeed find a way to survive in a series of underground buildings.
We were always told there was nothing left of 13.
Capital bombed the surface to rubble. But we're military, so we learn to survive down here.
They spent very little time above ground in the fresh air to avoid being detected. They were completely cut off from the rest of the country, bar a few underground rebels that lived in the other districts and in the capital.
Tigris, do you remember me? I'm with Plutarch's Underground. We need your help.
Clear!
This means that they would get no help or intervention in a time of crisis. One such crisis was the smallpox epidemic that broke out in the district a few years before the refugees from 12 arrived.
I hardly ever see children around here.
Please check in with your unit
A lot of them were lost in an epidemic a few years ago.
Interestingly though, smallpox was completely eradicated from planet Earth. In fact, it was declared in 1980 that smallpox no longer exists. Now, we know that the story of the Hunger Games takes place in a future of our world. So how did a disease that was completely eradicated come back? The obvious answer is that people stopped vaccinating against it. We're in a time period where a lot of people are choosing to not vaccinate against diseases, so could this have brought smallpox back? Unfortunately, in this case, vaccinations actually don't have anything to do with it. Obviously, if we were to vaccinate against a disease, it stops people from catching it and spreading it to others. But the fact of the matter is, smallpox doesn't exist in nature at all. There's no way for anybody to catch smallpox. Vaccines against smallpox do exist, and we're going to come back to this a little bit later on, but the fact that vaccines do exist doesn't mean that we actually vaccinate against it anymore. Which makes sense. Why would we vaccinate against something that doesn't exist? Especially considering the vaccination against smallpox is not a pleasant one and actually has a lot of side effects. So this brings me back to my original question. If smallpox no longer exists in nature whatsoever, how did it come back to District 13 and kill hundreds of people?
A lot of them were lost in an epidemic a few years ago. Coin lost her family too. Daughter and a husband.
Well, first let's look at where smallpox actually comes from and how it spreads. Smallpox is a disease similar to other poxes such as cowpox or chickenpox. However, we don't actually know when it initially started. It spreads through coughing, sneezing, or sharing your bodily fluids with someone, for example, kissing them. This virus spreads very efficiently and very quickly. It's especially fast if it's in an enclosed building with no ventilation or air purification systems. This is very similar to how District 13 is built. They live underground in buildings that aren't in fresh air. And yes, they do have ventilations and air purification systems, but they're still in an enclosed space.
Reduce oxygen to 14% to conserve it.
Copy that.
Once there's a patient zero, that virus spreads like a wildfire. 3 out of every 10 patients who get infected will die from this disease. This is especially true of anyone who is weaker, for example, the elderly or young children.
I hardly ever see children around here.
There is technically no treatment for smallpox other than hoping that the body will heal itself. Much like with chickenpox, those of you who have had it, and I know I have, remember, there's nothing you can do, it's just gonna go away. Though I did mention earlier on, there is a vaccine that exists. If a person is vaccinated before they get exposed to the virus, they won't get sick. If they are vaccinated within the first 3 days of getting sick, they do still get sick, but their symptoms aren't actually that bad. That bad, relatively speaking, obviously. And if a person is vaccinated between day 4 and day 7 after getting sick, they will still get sick and they'll likely get pretty bad symptoms. However, that's kind of a best case scenario. If you've left the vaccine this late, you're likely going to get as sick as someone who wasn't vaccinated. There's another caveat to the vaccine. If you've developed a rash, the vaccine won't help you. Not only only will the vaccine not stop any of your symptoms, it's also not going to stop the spread of this disease. At this point, you would have the vaccine in the hope that maybe it will help with some of the symptoms, but it's not going to change your chances of survival. As you can see, smallpox is no joke, and it's a very intense and deadly virus. Thankfully though, as I've mentioned, it doesn't exist in nature. Wait, then how come it came to District 13? We keep coming back to this. Because it's a virus, it's not something a person is born with that they could then spread. And once you've eradicated a virus, it doesn't just pop back up. Smallpox is actually studied in a lot of different laboratories, and there's a lot of specimens kept worldwide. These specimens have to exist. They give us a way to be able to test potential new vaccinations and find ways to control this virus. But these specimens do cause a problem. They can easily be used as a bioterrorist weapon. A bioterrorist weapon is using a chemical or a virus and turning into basically a bomb.
And 3. Is there any radiation? None detected.
You can then drop this bomb on a population and infect the majority of the population very quickly. There is a huge stock of smallpox held in the United States, along with enough vaccinations to vaccinate all of the citizens of the US. And in the Hunger Games universe, Panem exists where the United States once stood, which means Panem has inherited everything from the United States, including their labs, specimens, and vaccines. With this information, it becomes very clear to see how smallpox came to enter District 13. The capital of Panem, named the capital, because that's pretty obvious, would be in charge of holding all of the medical stocks for the country. However, leaders in the capital decided that the rebels in District 13 are really starting to get too far. There had been an agreement to live in peace, knowing that a physical attack from the capital would mean immediate retaliation from District 13. And bearing in mind that 13 was the home of the nuclear weapons of Panem, you don't really want to anger them.
You had all of this, and you just left the districts to fend for themselves?
It's not that simple, Katniss.
So how do you calm down an entire population without physically attacking them? You send in a bio-bomb. The minute that bomb hits and officials in 13 realize it's holding smallpox, everything stops. The citizens need to be immediately quarantined, put in a safe place, and any people who are sick need to be isolated. Everyone would be aware that smallpox left in 13 would spread like wildfire and kill everybody. Which means time is of the essence. Anyone who's sick needs to be dealt with immediately. This urgency means that 13 would not have time to retaliate against the capital. It is possible to create a vaccine against smallpox using cowpox. This would mean that 13 would need to have access to cowpox, which means they need to have sick cows. And considering everybody lives in very close quarters, any sick animals would be put down immediately. So it's very unlikely that District 13 was actually able to create or get access to any of the vaccines for smallpox, which means they weren't left with many choices. They just had to quarantine the sick and get them away from the healthy and hope it doesn't spread anymore. The only positive side to this is once you are infected with smallpox, if you survive, you're actually immune to the disease. So it means that if the capital were to try another smallpox bomb now, only the citizens of 12 would be affected, which kind of sucks. But hey, I guess at least the citizens of 13 don't need to be worried about getting sick again. Would you have liked to live in District 13? Please tell me in the comment section down below. And until next time, happy bubbles! Thanks so much for watching this video, and thank you so much to my Patreon bubblers for supporting the channel. If you want to see any of my other videos, you can click on the box on the left to find out quite a few facts about President Coin, or you can click on the box on the right to find out about District 13's previous failed rebellions. Thank you for liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos.